Coming up on Network Africa, the Gambia's president-elect Adama Barrow says he's confident that he will be sworn in next week. The U.S. is set to lift some financial sanctions against Sudan. And Egyptians turn to herbal remedies as currency drop hits medicine costs. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Temito Kwefagbemi. The Gambia's president-elect Adama Barrow has advised President Yahya Jammeh not to seek asylum, as is confident that direct talks can solve the crisis. Mr. Barrow also says that he's confident that he will be sworn in next week, despite his rival's refusal to give up power. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has arrived in Banjul to try and broker an end to the deadlock. Lawmakers in Nigeria have also voted to offer Mr. Jammeh asylum to help negotiations. President Jammeh's term officially ends next Wednesday, but he has challenged the election results in court. The former coup leader, who has ruled for 22 years, had originally accepted the shock result of last month's election, but he later rejected it after the Election Commission changed some of the results. Kenya's Communication Authority, the body which regulates the communication sector, has warned that it could shut down the internet during the August 8th general elections to prevent violence. The Director General, Francis Wanguzi, says the state agency has acquired surveillance systems to monitor social media and mobile phones. He adds that the surveillance is meant to prevent the repeat of the 2007-2008 post-election violence, in which 1,500 people were killed and 600,000 others displaced. Several African governments have resorted to blocking the internet during elections, arguing that they want to stop the spread of misinformation. The head of the United Nations peacekeeping operations, Yves Latsus, has urged the international community to push for a swift endorsement of the political accord in the Democratic Republic of Congo and to put in place a transitional government of national unity. On December the 31st, Congo's opposition leaders signed an agreement with President Joseph Kabila's party for elections to be held by the end of this year.
While addressing the Security Council, the head of the United Nations peacekeeping operations called on the international community to push for a swift endorsement of a political accord in the Democratic Republic of Congo, meant to put in place a transitional government of national unity.
I would encourage the Council members to continue to call on the Congolese political actors to endorse swiftly and to agree on the implementation arrangements for the accord of 31st December, to put in place the transitional government of national unity, because failure to do so would risk delaying the holding of elections and increasing greatly the risk of increasing political crisis and violence across the country.
Latsus also noted ongoing volatility in the security situation in eastern DRC, citing the threat posed by foreign armed groups, namely the Allied Democratic Forces and Rwanda's FDLR, whose activities have contributed to a rise in insecurity in many parts of the country.
Effects of instability in neighboring countries, notably South Sudan and Burundi, also are felt already in the DRC, and there is a risk that they will continue to grow. There are now around 70,000 South Sudanese refugees that have entered the Ouele and Ituri provinces over the last 6 months, and that brings about significant challenges from a humanitarian point of view.
Mediators from Congo's Catholic Church had been heaping pressure on both sides for weeks to sign an agreement aimed at averting a slide into anarchy and possibly another civil war over Kabila's decision not to step down despite his mandate expiring more than a week ago. If they stick to it, the agreement will deliver the Democratic Republic of Congo's first peaceful transfer of power since independence from Belgium in 1960. But any failure to implement the deal would worsen instability that has seen scores of people killed over the past 4 months, many of them protesters shot dead by security forces.
The United States is set to announce the easing of some financial sanctions against Sudan. A senior U.S. official says the limited sanctions relief is an acknowledgement of the progress made by the government of Sudan. The United States first imposed sanctions on Sudan in 1997, including a trade embargo and blocking the government's assets for human rights violations and terrorism concerns. The United States layered on more sanctions in 2006 for what it said was complicity in the violence in Darfur. Well, let's get more on this story from the VOA's Jill Craig, who joins us live from Nairobi. You're welcome to the program, Jill.
Thank you very much.
So why is the U.S. easing sanctions on Sudan at this time?
White House officials have said that Sudan has made progress in fighting terrorism, reducing conflict, denying safe haven to South Sudanese rebels, and also in improving humanitarian access. So those are the main reasons. And then in addition to that, Sudan has told the United States that it will work closer with its own intelligence officers and officials for closer cooperation in the future.
So is the United States also going to drop Sudan from its state sponsor of terror list?
No, that designation still stands. And then the other two countries on that list include Iran and Syria. Now, the U.S. put Sudan on that as that designation in 1993. And what that does is it restricts U.S. foreign aid. It bans defense export sales. Defense export and sales, and then also it imposes some various financial restrictions. So that's kind of what that designation does. But no, they are not going to be lifted from that list anytime soon.
Now, this announcement to ease some of the sanctions comes about a week before President Barack Obama leaves office. Is it possible for President-elect Donald Trump to bring back these sanctions once he's sworn into office?
Yes, that will be possible. What will happen is that President Obama will sign an executive order which carries with it a 6-month review period. Now, during that period, if Sudan is found by U.S. officials to actually regress on the progress that the U.S. says it has made so far, it can actually reverse that decision. And therefore, right now, we don't really know what President-elect Trump, what kind of relationship he's going to want to have with Sudan, but certainly they will be able to make a decision once they're in office.
The Sudanese president, Omar al-Bashir, is wanted by the ICC for war crimes. So what are rights activists saying about the news that the U.S. is easing sanctions on Sudan, despite the fact that the president is wanted by the ICC?
Well, as you can imagine, they're not very happy about it. Today, Human Rights Watch released a statement calling the decision to ease these sanctions inexplicable. The statement went on to say that Sudan has failed to make progress on core benchmarks from ongoing war crimes and crimes against humanity in Darfur and other conflict zones. This statement also added the fact that Obama's administration is sending, quote, the worst possible message to Sudan and other repressive regimes by basically saying that if you cooperate with the U.S. on counterterrorism, then we'll ignore the abuses that your country, including your president, may have committed previously.
So what effect is this news likely to have on Sudan's economy and on U.S.-Sudan relations?
Well, it's a very good question, and because the news is so new, we're not quite sure yet what those effects will be. However, with respect to the economy, Sudan's economy right now is failing. And so with the lifting of these sanctions, the country will now be able to trade with the U.S., it will be able to buy goods, it will be able to attract investment. And many people believe that this will perhaps even turn things around for Sudan, although, like I said, right now we're just not quite sure.
The VOA's Jill Craig, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
Reports say gunfire erupted in Cote d'Ivoire's second-largest city, Bouaké, today, before talks scheduled to hold between the defense minister and disgruntled soldiers who staged a 2-day mutiny last week. Witnesses say soldiers began firing in the air during a protest by residents against the mutineers near the cultural center where the talks were due to start. At least 100 heavily armed mutineers then poured into the city center aboard pickups, military transport trucks and other vehicles. Last week's revolt forced the government to agree to the mutineers' demands of bonuses and improved living conditions. Meanwhile, the authorities in Mali have arrested a man believed to be linked to an al-Qaeda attack on a beach resort town in neighboring Cote d'Ivoire. that killed 19 people early last year. Gunmen shot swimmers and sunbathers in the town of Grand Bassam, 40 kilometers from the commercial capital Abidjan, last March before storming into several hotels. The suspect was arrested in the town of Gossi in northern Mali by French soldiers who were involved in a regional operation against Islamist militant groups and was then handed over to Malian authorities. Both Côte d'Ivoire and Mali have arrested suspects in the wake of the attack. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, the Islamist group North African branch, claimed responsibility and said it was revenge for France's military intervention in Mali. Here in Nigeria, 4 female suicide bombers have attacked Madagali in northern Adamawa state today. They tried to enter the motor park in Madagali, and when they noticed they had been spotted, 3 of them detonated their explosives, while 1 was gunned down. According to the Army Public Relations Officer, Major Badari Akintoye, 2 civilians were killed, while 10 people sustained serious injuries and have been moved to the General Hospital in Michika. Just last month, the citizens also experienced a suicide bombing where at least 45 people were killed and several others injured. Meanwhile, troops of Operation Lafia Dole are continuing their mop-up operations around the Sambisa forest area and surrounding environment in Borno State. While on patrol in Madaki village, Biu local government area, 4 suspected Boko Haram members who were said to be on the run were arrested by soldiers attached to the task force brigade in Bara. According to the army, the suspects were intercepted at the outskirts of the town and about 100 motorcycles were recovered from them. The Director, Army Public Relations, Brigadier General Sani Usman, told journalists that some of the Boko Haram members dislodged from the Sambisa forest are presently on the run, and the general public should be on high alert by calling the attention of security operatives when people with unusual character and dressing are sighted. The Yobe State Governor, Ibrahim Gaidam, is inspecting schools currently undergoing major repairs. Governor Ibrahim Gaidam is reconstructing 3 schools in each of the senatorial zones of the northeastern state to encourage teaching and learning. The schools were destroyed during the insurgency by Boko Haram militants. Yobe is one of the worst affected states in Nigeria.
The rebuilding of schools is aimed at countering the ideologies of the Boko Haram militants by making teaching and learning conditions more attractive. 9 schools are being rehabilitated, 3 in each of the senatorial districts of the state. Governor Ibrahim Gaidam is inspecting some of the work sites where classes, administrative blocks, staff quarters, hostels and laboratories are being transformed.
We are renovating not only this secondary school. What we have seen is the same thing we are doing in Guyokura, which we expect to visit next week. And the same thing we are replicating in Pika Secondary School. Those are schools which were initially constructed 30-35 years ago.
Governor Gaidam promised that as time goes on, other schools will be upgraded as his administration continues to give education the needed priority.
It is our intention to ensure that after the completion of all the ongoing projects, we are going to furnish all the structures put in place. That is including the staff quarters. Government will going to provide furniture to the staff quarters, I'm sure, inshallah. According
to the State Commissioner for Education, contractors are being monitored to adhere to specifications in a project estimated to gulp 420 million naira.
We have 1 block of admin block. We have 1 dining hall and the kitchen, all being renovated, which is given to SGK Nigeria Limited. And Alhaji Bakura Kua Yunusari is renovating biology, chemistry and physics laboratories.
When the renovations are complete, there's a commitment from the state government that more teachers will be employed to raise the academic standard.
Still to come on Network Africa, Egyptians turn to herbal remedies as currency drop hits medicine costs. Please stay with us for details.